Summarize. The novel Pitbull, The Battle Over an American Icon, written in 2016 by author Bronwyn Dickey, is essentially a woman's exploration into the bloody history of the once beloved Pitbull dog breed. The editor and author, Bronwyn Dickey, who has earned such awards as the Hearst Editorial Excellence Award in Reporting, learned firsthand that the breed was not at all the vicious mongrel that the media has long portrayed them as, once she brought one home for herself. Through her novel, she examines the fear-mongering and misinformation that has been hand-fed to the public. This deliberate, fear-inducing reporting has led a once-cherished dog breed, which was a mascot for the American spirit, to become an animal defined by terms such as fighter, monster, demon, dangerous, and so much more. This novel was written to enlighten the reader, just as Dickey had been, in uncovering the truly lovable nature of an animal known to some as a beast. Overall purpose. Bronwyn initially started her journey assuming that pit bulls were aggressive and accurately portrayed by their stereotypes. Throughout the novel, Bronwyn investigates the fear-mongering and misinformation that has been widely spread about pit bulls. Her purpose was to enlighten the reader, much like she had been, about the true, lovable nature of the pit bull that others make out to be a beast.
When reviewing the book, we did enjoy it, and it was very enlightening on the breed, but we did notice it did have a strong bias towards favoring the breed, and it didn't really see the other point of view for people who fear the breed. Broman interviewed a large range of people and mentioned them throughout her book, and they were varying in their social class, their economic status, jobs, and their personal situations, and if they did own one, most of them ultimately liked pit bulls or had a background in animal rights. While some of these people were considered experts, a lot of them were advocates for the breed or people who owned one and would just talk about how positive their experience has been. So there's a wide scope of opinion, but it was not a broad expert level. So it was about a lot of opinion from personal people's stories, not many expert or varying opinions. We all agree overall that there's nothing wrong with pit bulls, so this book went along with our personal opinions, and we feel the sources that she mentioned were generally reliable. However, we did feel the fact that they were biased takes away from part of their credibility. Not all the sources were completely biased, but the way she presented them made them all seem positive in the aspect of the pit bull, so then we considered them to not be as credible.
Big takeaway 1. Are pit bulls inherently bad? No. A dog breed are not inherently bad. However, a lot of stigma that attaches to certain dog breeds create a negative narrative for them. For example, the pit bull. Pit bulls on the social logic scale, which according to week 4 is ranking animals according to their place or use in human society. With that, causing considering that pit bulls are bad, which ranks them at the bottom, that causes society to always portray them as dangerous. For instance, in the prologue, it was mentioned that there was an incident where a police officer was recorded shooting at a pit bull. His excuse was it was self-defense, because pit bulls are known for being dangerous and for killing people. Page 6. The author even wrote that even her family would even tell her that it was a bad idea to adopt a pit bull because sooner or later the dog would turn on her. Page 10. Additionally, according to the author, there has not yet been any gene found that specifically codes for aggressive behaviors in pit bulls. Aggression is not one behavior, but a vast spectrum of behaviors that varies. Page 116. Aggression behavior can be divided by at least 8 types. Playful, territorial/possessive, maternal, intrapacific, irritable, predatory, dominant, and fear. And each can be triggered differently by their environment and not be intentional. Page 118. A number of studies have confirmed that dogs lash out most frequently from fear and anxiety and not rage. Biting happens because of one party sending out signals that the other is not picking up. Page 128. Bite victims from pit bulls often mistakenly believe that the bite came out of nowhere, when in fact the dog was sending subtle signals about its level of discomfort, such as licking, yawning, looking away, or shaking themselves off. Page 118. Without knowing these signals, humans tend to push an animal beyond its stress threshold and forcing it into a situation where the animal feels it can escape, leading the dog to bite and attack a person.
Our second big takeaway was that misinformation can spread abuse. People just aren't aware that there are certain critical needs you have to meet for a pet to live a happy and healthy life. For example, in the book, Brownman works with an organization to provide fencing for yards and will provide spaying and neutering services to people who either aren't aware or choose not to have these things. Now, there's some people who just genuinely couldn't afford to have these surgeries done and couldn't afford these fences, but there's others who believe that a dog can live a very happy and healthy life on a short chain, or that not being spayed and neutered might give something to the dog that they wouldn't have if they were spayed and neutered. For instance, it's really common in some communities to think that neutering a dog takes away its personality and can make it sad, which might not necessarily be true, but is what those people think. We can also potentially tie this into our discussion in week 3, where we discuss the ethics of how we used animals. And as we said, people agree usually with the direct but equal theory, where we can use animals but must care for them. But what I've kind of discovered as we read through the book is that the lines can blur and become all shades of gray when you start considering the fact that, while this is true, ultimately the care of a pet is usually left up to just their owner, and they might not necessarily be following the, perfect guidelines of how to have a happy and healthy pet.
Looking at takeaway number 3, we will discuss how certain brands of media portray pit bulls. In our book, the author discusses the film The Little Rascals. In this film, there is an American Staffordshire Terrier who is given the role of playing Pete the dog. Overall, Pete was portrayed as one of the boys in the Little Rascals all-boy club. Throughout the film, he is kind and well-behaved towards the boys. However, when looking at the film All Dogs Go to Heaven, we can see that the portrayal of pit bulls differs significantly compared to the Little Rascals. The main antagonist, Carface, is a pit bull who's seen doing very bad things, some of which include kidnapping, using a gun, and even attempted murder. These 2 films both contain pit bulls, however, each one portrays them very differently. Another important point to mention is how in both films, these dogs are, to some extent, anthropomorphized. During lecture week 6, we talked about how many films that include animals try to appeal to the audience by giving those animals human-like characteristics. In The Little Rascals, Pete is considered as one of the boys, even though he is a dog. In All Dogs Go to Heaven, Carface wears clothes, smokes, and drives a car, all of which are things that dogs would not naturally do.
Originally, the Pit Bull Terrier was a breed of high standing. It was advertised across America that they were the perfect nanny dog, guard dog, and that they were just perfect for your average Joe. They were even called Yankee Terriers due to them being a symbol of American nationalism and their contributions to war efforts. Of course, as we all know, this image didn't stay perfect forever. In the 70s, dogfighting was becoming much more prevalent, and pit bulls were considered to have this natural drive and aggressiveness that would make them perfect for fighting and make them willing participants. In the 90s, it slowly devolved into dogs being reimagined with an urban edginess, and that was when pictures of pit bulls straining at the ends of their leashes and aggressively jumping against the fences were so common. And what you gotta think about is that many owners of pit bulls aren't ringleaders and aren't animal abusers. They just are impoverished people who don't have the necessary resources to adequately care for their animals. Ultimately, that led to the pit bull becoming anthropomorphized, just because we were seeing it as this scary, aggressive dog more so than, any other breed at the time.
Looking at takeaway number 5, we will discuss how research and studies have helped in disproving common pit bull stereotypes. In our book, the author discusses a study in which more than 13,000 dogs from over 31 breeds were given behavior tests. The results concluded that there was no relationship between a dog's specific behavior and its breed. This leads us to consider that other factors play into the behaviors that a specific dog may display. These factors include their level of training, the type of environment they are given to live in, as well as the disposition of their owners towards them. In an article by PETA, we can see various images of pit bulls in very poor conditions. By being subjected to these very bad conditions, it could potentially play a role in the behaviors that these dogs demonstrate. From lecture week 2, we talked about umwelt, and in the case of these dogs from the PETA article, they could show increased signs of aggression or bad behavior. However, it's not necessarily because these are pit bulls that they're acting this way. Considering their umwelt, they were raised in very poor conditions, which can make them more fearful and less understanding of humans, and this in turn can lead to more negative behaviors being displayed.
In conclusion, our group really enjoyed reading this book, even though we did know most of the information already presented inside of the book. We believe this book would be a good intro-level story about the breed of pit bulls and animal rights that surround it and all the breed legislations and breed-specific laws. Even though it reinforced information we already knew, the background that was illustrated in this book was really good for beginners like we stated, and it was very interesting to see it from a different point of view. We'd recommend this book to someone who's uninformed or doesn't really know much about pit bulls or is on the fence about the breed. This book would be great to give to a younger person who's been influenced by the media and all the negative stories you hear about the breed, and it could lead them to learn more about the animal rights and about the breed itself. For our own personal opinions, nothing really changed because of this book, but it did make us tempted to adopt another dog. We already have a desire to advocate for the breed through being most of us being animal science majors and being part of this class, but it did help us realize that anyone who reads this book or anyone who owns a pit bull can advocate for the breed and animal rights no matter what their background is.